On October 8, 2018, Hurricane Michael underwent a 48-hour rapid intensification period where it went from a Category 1 hurricane to a Category 4 hurricane. By landfall on October 10, 2018 at 12:30 p.m. Central Time, Hurricane Michael was an unprecedented for the region Category 5 hurricane, making landfall near Tyndall Air Force Base, Florida. Hurricane Michael was the strongest hurricane in recorded history to make landfall on the Florida Panhandle. Landing with sustained winds of 161 miles per hour and a minimum pressure of 919 millibars, the storm was the fourth most powerful hurricane to hit the United States, spreading devastation far inland through many counties in northwestern Florida, from Bay County, Gulf County, Calhoun County, even through Jackson County and Leon County, where the state capital is located. Hurricane Michael was unique in that it maintained its major hurricane status all the way through the Florida-Georgia state line. As it entered Seminole County, Georgia, it was still a strong Category 3 hurricane. Across northwestern Florida and into the state of Georgia, Hurricane Michael was responsible for $25 billion in damages. These are the 31 voices of Hurricane Michael, representing the many unique experiences and perspectives of the community members who endured the storm and its impacts. Voices of hope, empathy, pain, lessons learned, grit, determination, and extensive insight into one of the most catastrophic hurricane seasons the Florida Panhandle has ever encountered. I'm meteorologist Melissa Thomas, and allow me to introduce you to
Hello, I'm meteorologist Melissa Thomas, and I'm here with another one of the voices of Project Hurricane Michael's Voice. Today we're speaking with Miss Kayla Hill, and a little mini Michael's Voice, maybe she'll make an appearance throughout the interview, Miss Genevieve Hill. Another brave storm survivor. Yeah, very brave little survivor. Miss Kayla works in Calhoun County as a dispatcher during the storm that made landfall on October 10th, 2018, Hurricane Michael. She was a dispatcher then.
Correct.
Since then, she's gone on to take on more responsibility, but we'll get into that a little bit later in the interview. And we're doing our interview in Helping Hands here in Blountstown in Calhoun County, a really charitable thrift shop and store who, I don't think they did this on purpose, but this backdrop, this Halloween backdrop for the interviews, too priceless, just perfect. So you might hear a little bit of background noise on that front, but that is just because we are really grateful to be able to use this space for the interviews.
Yes.
So let's start with a little bit about yourself. Pre-Hurricane Michael, you're living in Liberty County, actually.
Correct.
Working in Calhoun County.
Yes.
So how is this area home to you?
So I moved here from Seminole County when I was just about to start 6th grade. And so I grew up with everyone here in Calhoun County. I went to Calhoun County schools. My first jobs, my first car was all purchased here. My dad works for the federal government, so anytime he took a promotion, we moved. And unfortunately, I wasn't able to graduate with all my friends. We moved away out of state. But as soon as I could, this was home to me. And so I moved back soon after turning 18 and just made it home again. We lived here for a number of years after. And when I met my husband, we moved to Liberty County because that's where he's from. So.
Okay, so 2018 hurricane season rolls around that summer.
Yes.
How are you feeling? Are you thinking hurricanes? Are you prepared? I mean, you're a dispatcher, so you probably are actually getting...
So my husband and I tend to kind of keep an eye on things, and if it's, when it's still a tropical storm, we'll go out and we try to fill our gas cans, get water, MREs, or shelf-stable foods. Touching base with the severity of Michael, I don't think anyone could have been fully prepared for that. But, we did make an attempt to prepare. And then I knew that I would be stuck at work. And so I had to also prepare for someone to keep my little one.
So you're working through the landfall, and your little one is being watched by a trusted family member.
Yes, my best friend.
And
yes.
that must have been, I mean, I can't even imagine.
It was terrifying when we lost contact, when the cell phone towers and everything went down. I had no way to find out if they were okay until the second day. Day 2 after landfall, I walked, it was about 2 miles and over trees to get there to make sure that they were okay.
That was your first contact with them?
Yes. It was the second day after the landfall.
I have no words. No words. So 2 days before you even get in touch and confirm that your little one is safe, and this whole time you're working. Mm-hmm. Now, I know in Bay County, there's a period during landfall that it got so intense that even first responders could not even maneuver in it. Did you guys go through something similar of a no assistance window?
So our sheriff made the determination that after 50-mile-per-hour winds, sustained winds, we would not be able to respond. It wouldn't be safe for even the lower profile Crown Vics to go out in that kind of wind. And we did make an attempt even after that to rescue someone that had multiple trees on their trailer. And unfortunately, we weren't ever able to get there until after the storm. But
so that was a good call.
It was a good call, yeah. When we were getting close to that 50-mile-per-hour threshold, we tried to send them out, and it just like a white wall of rain. You know, you can't see because the wind and the rain. So it doesn't make sense to people. You know, sometimes when you're in the middle of the worst day of your life or the worst month of your life, we can't come out and help. But at the end of the day, you know, they wouldn't have made it anyways. Yeah. There were so many trees down, and it's just putting another life in danger.
Yes. What kind of shifts were you working in that scenario?
So any full-time staff is immediately mandatory the day or two before, just in preparation. We try to make sure that everything's good. We have to pull out our backup 911 laptop in case the main 911 system goes down. We have a backup. Yeah. And before landfall, we were doing probably 12s, give or take, depending on how things went.
12's too much for me.
Yeah. But throughout the landfall, we were pulling 18 to 20-hour shifts and sleeping right there. We had cots in dispatch, or I was actually stationed in the emergency operations center at the courthouse.
Okay.
So we had to have dispatchers there and at our 911 stations. And we lost all radio communication, all cell phone communication, everything. Most landlines were damaged. Very few people had landlines. So you ended up with 4 or 5 people from a neighborhood going to one person's house that had a working landline phone to call 911 on 5 or 6 different things. And we didn't have radio communication. There was no way to page out your ambulance and tell them on the radio. That's why I was stationed at the courthouse. The landline between the sheriff's office and the courthouse worked. Yeah. So our dispatchers at the 911 station would take the call, and then they would call over to the courthouse and give me the information. And it was my job to run around until I found someone with EMS, either our county or eventually the volunteering counties, and be like, here, go to this address. You know?
And you're finding these people physically in person?
Physically in person, yes.
Gosh. Now, are you running around like the general neighborhood vicinity, or just in the courthouse as people are coming and going?
The courthouse. So most of the time, for the first 3 days, we had set times at like 7 a.m., 3 p.m., 7 p.m., and I think midnight, where everyone, if you weren't out rescuing somebody, would reconvene at a center place so that we could give more calls. Yeah.
Okay, that's helpful.
And and then eventually, I think by the 5th day, the National Guard came and set up a satellite, or they called it a SAT-CAL. Yeah. And that gave us some temporary radio communication, but it only worked within so many miles of Blountstown. Yeah. So it was still mostly, you know, handwritten addresses and what was needed at that address, and then finding someone with fire, EMS, or law enforcement and passing it to them.
Oh. Talk about when a lot of the conversations we have about disaster recovery and moving into surviving immediately after the hurricane, it's like going back in the Stone Age. You know, a lot of the convenience we take for granted in society, just on the living front. I can't imagine that's hard to just live daily in. I cannot imagine having to do the specific job you had.
Here.
Can I bring it to my home?
You can stay right here with it.
I think when she gets right there, she's on camera.
I buy this.
Are you going to buy that?
Can you wave to the camera?
This is the mini Hurricane Michael's voice. She braved a really big storm.
Do you remember the storm?
Yeah.
Where were you?
I was
Whose house were you at?
I was at Nick's,
Mm-hmm.
and the bad storm came.
And what room were you in, hiding?
I don't know.
The bathroom
Yeah.
with a mattress over you?
That's a safe spot.
Yeah.
That was smart.
Yeah.
That's good.
Mm-hmm.
So brave.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't. She's so little.
So
I would have.
She
My
was
parents went through it, and if I
2.
was with them, I'd have been terrified.
Yeah,
As
she
an
was 2 when it.
2 years old, surviving Hurricane Michael.
Mm-hmm.
So we're talking about doing your job under these limited resources, and how back to the Stone Age. I mean, you're literally just writing hand notes
On Post-it notes.
yeah.
Yeah.
and disseminating information in that manner.
Mhm.
And I cannot imagine how hard that was. While we're on the topic, and
Mommy.
these interviews get posted on my page and a YouTube page, and anybody who comes across it might one day be a dispatcher that goes through something similar. Do you have any tips, advice? What helped you get through it? Any insight you can share of working it?
Right. It's really hard to even mentally prepare for that. And at the end of the day, you just have to kind of be able to shut off your emotions, shut off and get the job done. You can't reflect on a lot of people calling, you know them personally growing up in this community, and you can't let that affect you or compromise
I didn't even
it.
Consider
Yeah.
That. Oh my gosh, what an interesting highlight to bring to that situation, because I do know the National Guard, very rare case with Hurricane Michael, they were activated for their own home.
Mm-hmm.
But for the most part, Guard only gets activated for other communities.
Correct.
Because of that very same reason.
Right.
You can't dig someone's family out.
Right.
Wondering about your family.
Right.
So that's the same for dispatchers. You're taking calls from people you've grown up with,
yes,
friends, and
and you know,
not knowing what your daughter's going
exactly.
through.
You have to just kind of shut down that part of yourself and be able to momentarily
compartmentalize.
Thank you. Compartmentalize. That's not healthy to do long term, but in a situation like that, to be able to just kind of shut down the mommy part and know that she's with my best friend and that she's in good hands no matter what. And I've got to help these people that need help.
So how long did the situation with the limited resources and organizing of help last immediately after the storm moves out of the area?
Our sheriff mobilized our county resources immediately. As soon as, the rain was still raining, but as soon as the winds dropped below that threshold and it was safe, we mobilized what limited resources our county had. Like I said, my husband being in corrections, he immediately sent out any inmate that was approved to be outside of the jail.
Yes, and your husband works for Liberty County as a corrections
officer. I'm sorry, for Calhoun.
Calhoun County.
Yes, we both work here. Yes.
Both work in Calhoun County. And you said he was a corrections officer. We spoke about it previously.
Yes, he's a correctional officer, and his job is primarily inmate transport, like to and from court dates and things like that.
So he was as busy as you were.
Yes,
for this storm.
Yes. Luckily, he wasn't called in until after landfall, but we didn't know that at the time, which is why I had my daughter with my best friend. But yeah, he was mobilized immediately in his patrol car. He had 2 or 3 inmates in the back, and they were donated chainsaws from people throughout the community, and they just cleared trees and
making room for further mobilization.
Right.
And moving,
we knew that help was coming from other agencies, and so the sheriff's priority was clearing the main road so that help could get here. So then we could have more resources. And then we actually had, I think, a group from Pennsylvania that all they do is search and rescue, and they came up with a really awesome game plan. Once the main roads were clear, we sent out teams like my husband to clear all the smaller roads, and then 1 square mile by 1 square mile teams were assigned. So you'd have a group of 6 or 7 men and women go out, and their job with our 911 coordinator and GIS mapping, we would print a paper map of 1 square mile of this county, and it would show you where each house was.
Oh, wow.
And so they would just go out and they would check every single house.
They were responsible for.
And then they would come back and get another square mile.
Oh, wow.
And we cleared the whole county that way. And forgive me for not knowing the exact square mileage of the county. But.
Oh, no. Yeah, that's still so amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, covering the county in such a archaic
way.
Right. But, and it sounds like you got the job done.
It did, yeah. And that ensured that, people that may have been trapped without a way to get out of their house to get to a phone were still checked on. Even if it looked like an abandoned house, if it was on that map, they broke into the
Made sure it
door
was
and made
abandoned.
sure that even if no one answered the door, that no one was inside, that they had left. And then I think they had like chalk spray paint they would
Yep.
do to mark that the house had been checked and either was evacuated empty or that the residents were transferred somewhere.
So you guys are starting this process. Was that before the National Guard started in, or was that incorporated with the National Guard?
That was incorporated with the National Guard. The first help, so National Guard sent us two kind of like liaisons before landfall. They were there with us at the courthouse during the landfall, and then they were the ones that let the base know, okay, that we've had no communications. We need a SAT cow ASAP. We need men to be on the ground helping. So they really called in all the cavalry to get help. And I know we had so many different agencies help too, but FWC came with just a chainsaw army to help clear the roads and clear trees off houses. And
sounds like the cavalry came in to help the cavalry that was already working.
By I'd say day 2 or day 3, we had all the outside agency help.
So then you're moving into survival at this point.
Yes.
You've gotten through the immediate survival mode. How would you explain the next couple of weeks? Or I asked this question weeks and months. It seemed like such a slow process for most. The answer to that question is kind of similar.
Yeah.
How did that look for you?
It took almost 2 weeks to get the cell phone service for all companies restored. So me having a phone that wasn't, Verizon is a big one here. Verizon, I think, got restored first.
Yeah.
But because they brought in another satellite Cal, but for everyone to have cell phone access restored, that took almost 2 weeks. And so one of our priorities when in survival mode was, how do we get the important information? Where is FEMA going to be with food and first aid supplies? Where is, is the hospital okay because the hospital lost its roof? And how do we get that information to people? Well, we ended up getting a generator. I think the National Guard provided it, and they were on the emergency fuel run to our radio station, WYBT.
Okay.
So anyone that had a working emergency radio could switch to the local channel, and it would be broadcast 24/7 with that. Then we also would print. We have a massive. It's part of our GIS mapping for the county. It's a massive printer, and we would print these probably 3-foot by 5-foot posters.
Okay.
With every 24 hours, we'd go post them up at gas stations that were open, at the grocery stores, places we thought lots of people would see, and just let them know like where the food and water is going to be, where
your resources
exactly.
are. Okay, this is awesome. And that was the few weeks moving without the cell phone service, moving through no cell phone service.
Right.
Okay. When would you say, as a dispatcher, or how was dispatching like through the weeks?
We saw a significant influx in calls. Most people, even if they had transportation for minor things to get to a hospital, they might have had before the storm, they might have had a tree land on their car. So we saw a lot of calls for ambulance transport to the hospital, or even 1 to 2 weeks later, people calling saying, we were fine, but now we're running out of food and water, and we can't get out of our land. The trees are just blocking us in, or I don't have a car. And so even, in the weeks.
The weeks leading after the landfall, no matter how prepared these individuals were, their preparation only lasted them so long in something of this scale.
Right,
So they
exactly.
used up their water, they used up their food, and I think a lot of people don't realize that even in over preparing, no matter how prepared you are, with something of this scale,
it's gonna run out. And it was really neat as a dispatcher to, we had to try and keep track of resources, and to see some of the bigger churches had, they were cooking hot meals at a certain time every day. So anyone, if they were in need of a hot meal, whether you were a first responder or somebody that just lost everything, could go by and get these hot meals. And we had to kind of keep track of everything that was going on in the county, so that if you get the call and you have to try and play matchmaker, okay, this family needs this, where can they find this, or where can we direct them to? Or we even had, just as a community came together, I know some of our librarians went to some of the older citizens that couldn't get out away from their house but were running out of things. They hand delivered more supplies. Several of the dispatchers, including myself, decided to start a Facebook page where we would figure out what families needed, something where they could come kind of anonymously, and then we would reach out to, even I had groups in South Florida that would drive up here and donate. Some of it was used, some of it wasn't, just to meet those needs.
Massive coordination.
Yeah, absolutely.
And helping people do it anonymously.
Yeah.
In some cases, I mean, it's very difficult for certain people to ask for help.
Right.
And most people to ask for help. And I think that's really cool that you made an effort to keep an anonymous route for people to take. I mean, that was our concern, that some people needed help but weren't asking because they didn't want to put themselves out there. And so, it's just since been retired, but we did start a Facebook page and let them know that it wasn't just dispatchers, it was county employees across the board, school board, library, everyone, wanted to help, that it would stay between us. And then, we would just say, we have a family of 6 that needs diapers, that needs blankets, that needs, even basic construction tools or anything like that. I think that's something really good that you bring to the table on top of everything else you've brought to the table for the project. I mean, it's just amazing. For future communities that might be watching this interview and going through their own devastation of this scale, having a resource that allows people to reach out for help, as a meteorologist, I would like to say under the radar,
right,
that's very valuable. So that's something interesting that we haven't talked about yet, as a recovery kind of tip. Advice. That's awesome. So how has the year been for you?
It's been slow. My house still has damage. We were very, very blessed. I think a lot of people on the Liberty County side, I like to chalk it up to the higher river bluff, that maybe it provided wind buffer, but I'm not a scientist. I can't confirm that, but I feel like a lot of Liberty County residents didn't see the extent of damage that Calhoun and Jackson did as far inland as we are, let alone not even touching what Bay and Gulf County went through as coastal communities.
I'm not familiar with the geography of the storm landfall just quite yet myself. I'm mean, just so much dive into post-graduation, but I think you were onto something as far as just the geography of being kind of north of that curve and how it made landfall. But
I think, as from a 911 dispatcher point of view, our calls have never gone down to pre-Michael levels. So even in immediate chaos of the storm, we hit an all-time high, and things have settled to a new low, but I'd still say we're probably 20% higher in 911 calls and just even admin line calls for service.
I think that makes sense because during recovery in the community, you've got many more structures that have their vulnerabilities. You have people's health that have extra vulnerabilities now.
Yes.
Just the community as a whole is vulnerable on the front, that a higher call rate would make sense in the recovery stage. And we are coming up on the year anniversary, October 10th. So it made landfall on October 10th, 2018. October 10th, 2019 is going to be the 1-year anniversary.
Yes.
We did reference that you had taken on new responsibilities.
Yes.
Highlight that for a second.
So I had actually got a job opportunity to work in Tallahassee, which is kind of my dream job, and I left for about 6 months. But the drive was just so much. So one of my friends contacted me. She had taken over as 911 coordinator and altogether communications supervisor, and she wanted someone to kind of share that burden with. And so experience someone. She reached out, and I was like, yes, for you, I'd love to. And I missed dispatching. Throughout the years, I started in 2012 as a dispatcher, and I've left and gone and done some other things, and I always am drawn back to it. That's where my heart is.
You're a helper.
Yes. And so now I am the assistant 911 coordinator for Calhoun County and one of the communication supervisors over dispatch.
Well, congratulations on that. And I'm sure the experience that you went through with the storm is going to be invaluable you're going to be an asset for any future storm that even tries to come near the area. Hopefully it doesn't.
Yes.
But with community members such as yourself, your experience is invaluable, and you're going to be an asset for that. And even, like I said, the information you've provided here for community members across the nation that might run across this video somehow and get exposed to what you went through. I mean, and I'm pretty sure you might go on to do any, more educational events. I do not doubt that. You will find yourself teaching about what you went through and helping the community learn from what they went through, what they did right, what they could have done better. I bet you're going to find yourself in an educational position here and there throughout your career. But is there anything else you want to highlight before we?
Not. I think we kind of covered everything. You know, we almost every staff, all the full time that we have now in Calhoun County Dispatch was either part-time or full-time during the storm. And a lot of us have now moved up and are in more authoritative roles. And so I feel like we are awesome, even better prepared than we were now if this ever happened again. You know, but
I think with community members such as yourself, the rebuild is in good hands.
Yeah.
And let alone another storm coming through, just the rebuild alone. It's going to take community members like you and little Genevieve.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for coming out to the project
Thank
and
you.
sharing today. And this is how I feel about this interview. You struck my heart. It's just perfect. But thank you again.
Thank you.